neurogenesis. New neural connections are being formed, allowing children to acquire new skills, including language. These synapses are the connections between brain cells. And in the early years, the brain makes a lot of these connections, especially for language. But as children grow, the brain starts pruning away. What is pruning away? It is removing the unnecessary connections that it does not use. So keeping only the strongest ones. This helps the brain become more efficient. Think of it, for instance, let's say you have a messy desk. And in order for you to work efficiently, you must remove the clutter. You must remove those things that are unnecessary in order for you to focus on the things that are important. This is what the brain does, pruning away unnecessary neural connections. And lastly, there is gradual lateralization of function, which refers to the process by which specific cognitive functions like language becomes more dominant in our hemisphere, in one hemisphere of the brain over time. And most likely for language, it is usually on the left side of the brain, of the hemisphere, which becomes more lateralized for language. And so to wrap it all up, my presentation, I know that was so too many, or that was a bit much to take in. To wrap it up, babies go from cooing to babbling to producing their first words and to producing two-word sentences and to full sentences. This is all thanks to the rapidly developing developing brains as they grow. The brain develops its language skills through natural processes like strengthening connections and focusing on language areas like the Broca's area, the Wernicke's area. And to support this fast development, during the early years, neural networks for language grows rapidly. This involves processes like myelination, synapse separation and pruning, and gradual lateralization. So that is all for the timeline of language acquisition with regard to the neural development and behavioral development. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Webb, for that enlightening presentation. The timeline of language acquisition is indeed fascinating, and it's incredible to see how early behaviors shape linguistic skills. We will now open the floor for questions from the audience. Please feel free to raise your queries by raising your virtual hand. We will be entertaining 2 questions per presenter, one from each section.
Are there questions? If there is none, we may proceed with the next presenter.
Okay, since there were no questions, let us please call Sir Alieto to choose our second presenter for this evening.
It's in the GC. Inierga is next.
Ah, thank you, sir. Next, I would like to invite the announcer for our second presenter, Mr. Jervis Okang.
Thank you, Miss Tan. Good evening, everyone. I am Jervis Okang, speaking before you tonight to formally introduce our speaker for the second topic. Our current speaker's topic will be on the neural mechanisms of plasticity and the end of the critical period for acquisition. Inirga Christine Janelle M. She is currently a second-year student taking up the Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English at Western Mindanao State University College of Teacher Education. She graduated senior high school as an honor student from Future Generation Philippine International School, a school located in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and received the Loyalty, Research, and Capstone Project Award. And now she continues. Apologies, there's an error in my script. I forgot to. Where was I? Okay, so um Capstone Project Award, and now she continues to strive for excellence and graduate with flying colors.
Once again, thank you for that, Mr. Jervis, Okang. Everyone, please welcome Miss Inyerga.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, everyone, and good evening, Sir Elieto. As I have mentioned, I am Christine Janelle M. Nierga, and I will be discussing language acquisition and the human brain. Specifically, topic, neural mechanisms of plasticity and the end of the critical period for language acquisition. So, next slide. Now in this topic, we have here four distinct categories, which are the early language acquisition is crucial, neural changes and plasticity, the role of perineuronal nets, and implications for education and rehabilitation. So let's start first with early language acquisition is crucial. Next slide, please. So early language acquisition is crucial. So why is early language acquisition crucial? This is because it lays the foundation for the reading and writing skills in children as they enter and progress through school. This also boosts their memory and problem-solving skills. This also establishes communication and even better interactions with others, help children connect with their cultural identities, and allow children to express themselves better. So we start first with the critical period. So critical period, there is strong evidence for a critical or sensitive period for primary language acquisition. This is a window of opportunity where the brain is more readily adaptable. This occurs at the age of 5 to 6 or so, which means that the brain is most sensitive to language learning during the first few years of life. And next we have the impact of early exposure. So the impact of early exposure to a language is essential for full proficiency, especially in terms of phonology, syntax, and fluency. Um, the brain is prepared to pick up the sounds, rhythms, and rules of language during this period, meaning that children are able to absorb input effortlessly when exposed early. And lastly for this is the challenges of late acquisition, where states that late language learners often struggle with complex linguistic structures and may exhibit reduced proficiency. Late learners may struggle with complex grammar rules, particularly those that are not explicitly taught. Take Mayberry and Klunder's study about the deaf individuals who grew up in hearing families without exposure to a sign language and in countries which they received no education in written or spoken language. And when such individuals immigrated to the US and were extensively exposed to American Sign Language or the ASL, their findings show that there is no rich primary language in early life. Early in life, their language acquisition as teenagers and Then next, we have the second topic, which is the neural changes and plasticity. First, we have brain plasticity. So plasticity, um, the brain is capable of adapting and changing in response to experience, a phenomenon known as plasticity. So brain plasticity, this adaptability allows the brain to reorganize itself, forming new connections and strengthening the existing ones. Plasticity is particularly prominent or happening during childhood and adolescence, but continues throughout life, but at a slower rate. Then we have the neural correlates, which states that language acquisition is associated with specific neural changes, including increased gray matter in language-related regions and enhanced connectivity within language networks. So first, we have the increased gray matter. So increase in the volume of gray matter in brain regions, crucial for language processing, such as shown in the picture, Broca's area and Wernicke's area. These are essential. The Broca's area is essential for speech production, while Wernicke's area is essential for the comprehension of written and spoken language. And then we have the enhanced connectivity within language networks, which is strengthening the connections between the different brain areas, which results in a more efficient and integrated language network between all of the areas. Then we have age-related changes. Because as we age, the brain's plasticity slowly declines, which means that language learning may be more difficult for adults, especially for those who have not been exposed in early childhood. Um, so yes, and next we have the role of neuronal nets, starting with the synaptic consolidation. So synaptic consolidation, perineuronal nets are specialized structures that surround the neurons in the brain. They play a crucial role in solidifying and consolidating neural connections. Although as perineuronal nets mature, they are less capable of change, and they help solidify learning and memory. Next, we have the plasticity reduction. As I have mentioned, throughout life, our plasticity continues but at a slower rate, which makes it more difficult to acquire new information and to changing circumstances. The maturation of these nets can limit plasticity and reduce the ability to form new connections. And then we have the potential for intervention. So scientists may explore ways to temporarily reduce perineuronal nets in specific brain regions to enhance language learning or recovering language skills. Targeting perineural nets may offer opportunities to enhance language learning and recovery after brain injury. And lastly, we have the implications for education and rehabilitation. So firstly, we have the early interventions. So early interventions can be achieved through reading aloud to children, or promoting early language exposure is essential for optimal language development. And this can be achieved through reading aloud to children, as regular exposure to language can help in language development and as well as acquire vocabulary. This also provides opportunities for conversation to allow children to practice their language skills and develop fluency, and as well as surrounding children with language through music, games, and interactive activities. Then, second, we have the personalized approaches. Personalized approaches, tailored language learning strategies can help individuals of different ages and backgrounds achieve success. So recognizing that individuals learn language at different paces and through different methods, tailoring teaching approaches should consider their individual needs, their learning styles, and even their background. And lastly, we have the therapeutic interventions. Um, so, therapies that target neural plasticity may aid in language acquisition and recovery from language related impairments. So, this can be done through speech therapy to improve pronunciation and fluency, and even rehabilitation in cognitive context to improve functions like attention, and memory, and by stimulating the brain to help recover from brain injuries and improve skills. So that is all for the neural mechanisms of plasticity and the end of the critical period for language acquisition.
Thank you, Ms. Inierga, for that enlightening presentation. The concepts of neuroplasticity and critical periods are indeed crucial for understanding how we can best support language learning at different ages. Most crucial, especially to us, would be educators. Now, the floor for questions is open from the audience. Please feel free to unmute yourselves and state your curiosities. Okay, we have a question from Ms. Nicole Maribo Janea.
Hello and good evening po. My question was in one of your slides po about neural correlates. Can you please go back to that if that's okay lang po? Okay, ito na. Ano na? There. Okay. Thank you very much. You mentioned here includes increased gray matter in language related regions and enhanced connectivity within language words. My question is what is gray matter and how does this enhance connectivity as you've mentioned in language acquisition? Po? That's my question.
So, thank you for that wonderful question. So gray matter is actually crucial for language processing, and this is actually shown, like such as the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area, as I mentioned, they are essential for speech production, and they are also essential for the comprehension of written and spoken language. So through this, language can be acquired since this um, increased gray matter helps in processing language and speech better.
How about from our BSED 1A? Do you have any questions?
The conference is about to end. Usin, please prepare a new link. Everybody,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
let us
I'll
let's
be concluding this call and then I'll be
this concept of bilaterality, the bilateral activation or coordination of the two hemispheres. So, as we recall from our science class, we have two hemispheres present in our brain. The first is the left hemisphere, and the second is the right hemisphere. So, both of these hemispheres, to give you a brief rundown, both of these hemispheres contain these homotopic regions. What are homotopic regions? These are regions or areas in the brain which are essentially just mirrors of each other. So they have the same process, they have the same function. Essentially, they are like what's present in the left hemisphere is also present in the right hemisphere. So we can call these as the homotopic regions. They're just mirrors of each other. So the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, in early development, the bilateral activation of these hemispheres, accordingly, in children is pronounced. But of course, there are some exceptions to that. We will delve into that later. So functional asymmetry is minimal in infants with more bilateral activation. So instead of just one hemisphere being more activated and being more dominant than the other, which in infants, there is a bilateral activity and functional connectivity and functional activation between the two hemispheres. So instead of just one hemisphere working to produce to process linguistic inputs, both hemispheres in children are working together. So both are coordinated, both are activated, and both are contributing to the process of language acquisition. So accordingly, activation in the non-dominant hemisphere decreases over time. in which lateralization becomes more distinct by ages 5 to 7. So lateralization, we can think of it as the dominant or dominance. It is just another word for dominance. It's the word dominance itself. When we say that the left hemisphere becomes more pronounced than the right hemisphere in language processing, then we can say that the left hemisphere is more lateralized than the right hemisphere. So yes, according to the researchers, which are Elisa Newport and Heidi R. Getz, they said that in children, at birth, there is no pronounced bilaterality between the two hemispheres. Initially, as we are born into this world, there is just a weak there is a weak connectivity between the two hemispheres. But as we grow, as we reach months old and 1 year old or 2 years old, both of the hemispheres rapidly become interconnected. So in this sense, interhemispheric activity is more pronounced than intrahemispheric hemispherical activity. So inter, which means that both of the hemispheres are working together to contribute to the process of language acquisition. This lateralization between the two, I'd like to clarify, lateralization at the early development of the child, both of the hemispheres are lateralized. So there is no actual one hemisphere being dominant than the other. The only difference is that the left hemisphere is more concerned with auditory processing and language comprehension. So the left hemisphere is concerned with how the child perceives and understands linguistic inputs, whereas the right hemisphere is more linked with emotions. So both of these hemispheres have specific parts which perform their own functions related to language, and these parts are the temporal region and the frontal regions. So what are these regions? Both of these temporal and frontal regions are present in the left hemisphere just as it is present in the right hemisphere. The temporal is concerned with basic language comprehension. It is just where the child processes basic language inputs, whereas the frontal region is more concerned with complex language processing. So it's a higher order thinking function or homotopic region. So accordingly, lateralization, this bilaterality between the two hemispheres, this interconnectedness between the two hemispheres working together to contribute to language processing becomes pronounced when the child is aged from a few months old up to 5 to 6 years old. But as the child reaches the age of 7 years old, there's something called the adult lateralization, in which lateralization or activation or the work which is concerned with language processing is more burdened on the left hemisphere, which is why we say that the left hemisphere is more concerned with language than the right hemisphere. So there is still a small bilaterality or connectivity between the two hemispheres, even as we reach adult lateralization, but it is less pronounced. The left hemisphere is more lateralized than the right hemisphere the moment we reach age 6 to 7. So as adults, people our age, only the left hemisphere is dominant in terms of language processing. But in children, ages from months old to up to 5 to 6 years old, both of their hemispheres are active in language acquisition. So it's in the left hemisphere dominance was expected by birth or 24 months, but findings vary. So the reason why researchers cannot provide an objective number on what age these lateralizations exist, what age bilaterality becomes more pronounced, is because according to their research on the countless children which they've studied, this bilaterality, the moment or the age at which these bilateralities become pronounced are the moment these bilaterality become more pronounced varies. So one child could become both of their hemispheres could become pronounced at the age of 2 months old, whereas another child may have it pronounced at 1 year old. So yes. So left hemisphere dominance was expected by birth or 24 months, but findings vary. The lateralization is the timing of lateralization for language is uncertain. So there is no certain or objective value for this. We can only say that lateralization and bilateralization of both hemispheres occurs in the early stages of life. Next slide, please. So full lateralization is achieved much later in life. Just like I said earlier, full lateralization, language skills emerge before complete lateralization. So essentially, according to researchers, they say that the reason why children are able to acquire languages much more efficiently than adults, or they are able to master language in a miraculous manner, is because both of the hemispheres, as in children, are contributing or working together to the process to help with the process of language acquisition. Unlike in adults or people our age, only one hemisphere is dominant in terms of language acquisition, which is why we tend to find it harder to learn a language. And unlike in children, both hemispheres are working together, in which that it grants them an advantage. So next slide, please. Okay, so that's actually all. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Adanza, for that comprehensive presentation. It's fascinating to learn how functional activation in the brain evolves alongside language development. We will now open the floor for questions from the audience. Please feel free to share your thoughts or inquiries.
I think there's no question. Let us move on.
Now, I would like to invite the announcer for our fourth speaker, Ms. Isnang Hamida, to introduce the next topic. Thank you for that, Ms. Isnang Hamida. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Macrohon.
Okay, so thank you for that wonderful introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sir Alieto. Today, I'll be presenting a summary of the key findings from the recent analysis of human brain anatomy, specifically focusing on the brain structure, functionality, and development of language areas. This information is crucial for understanding how different brain regions contribute to cognitive processes, sensory integration, language production, and comprehension. So let's start by discussing the main structural components of the human brain. The frontal lobe plays a central role in higher cognitive functions, including memory, emotions, impulse control, problem solving, social interaction, and motor function. This lobe is essential for decision making and for regulating behavior. The parietal lobe, so moving on, the parietal lobe is responsible for our sensory perception and integration, as it processes information from all our primary senses such as taste, hearing, sight, touch, and smell, allowing us to interpret the world around us. The temporal lobe helps manage emotions, process sensory input, store memories, and understand language. This lobe is particularly important for language comprehension and emotional regulations. Finally, the occipital lobe, located at the back of the brain, is dedicated to visual processing, helping us interpret images and visual stimuli. So the human brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, each with a specific functional specializations within these hemispheres. We have four main lobes, the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. Each of these lobes has distinct responsibilities that contribute to our cognitive and sensory abilities. The frontotemporal cortex is a region in the brain that integrates functions from both the frontal and temporal lobes. The left hemisphere controls words and sentence production and comprehension. It is different from the corresponding areas of the right hemisphere. So the cerebral cortex, or the brain's outer layer, is composed of deep grooves called sulci and raised areas called gyri. These folded structures increases the brain's surface area, allowing it to hold more neurons and thus process more information efficiently. This is one of the reasons of the brain's impressive cognitive capacities. These foldings segregate brain areas and enhance the surface area and cognitive abilities of the brain. So in addition to the cortex, the brain is composed of two key types of matter, the white and the gray matter. White matter consists of nerve fibers or axons, which creates a vast network allowing communications between different brain regions, as it plays a crucial role in transferring information throughout the brain. While the gray matter is essential for processing sensory information, as it contains neuron cell bodies and processes signal from sensory organs, facilitating various brain functions. Next slide, please. So now let's focus on the brain regions involved in language processing, the arcuate fasciculus and the uncinate fasciculus. The arcuate fasciculus is a bundle of nerve fibers that connects the Broca's areas and Wernicke's areas, which are critical for language production and comprehension. It allows seamless information transfer between these regions, which is essential for effective language processing. The uncinate fasciculus is another important pathway that links the anterior temporal lobes within the orbitofrontal cortex. This connection is believed to integrate emotional and cognitive information, especially for memories and decision making. So lastly, regarding language development, the research shows that the mature lateralization of language areas, especially within white matter, does not fully develop until several years into life, while the coherence of white matter tract increases significantly between ages 2 and 7. There is still much to learn about how the left and right hemispheres that differ during early childhood and the exact developmental patterns. So to sum it all up, the human brain's complex anatomy and structural connectivity enable its vast array of functions from sensory processing and motor control to language and higher order cognitive tasks. Understanding these unique functions of each lobe, the role of white matter and gray matter, and the development of language areas can give us these wonderful insights into both normal brain functions and developmental disorders. So that's all for our presentations. Thank you. Are there any questions you'd like to ask?
Okay, I guess there being none, let us move on to the next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Macrohon, for that presentation. Understanding the anatomical structures involved in language processing is truly vital for educators as it informs how we approach teaching language skills. Moving on, the floor. Oh, let us proceed to our fifth and last speaker, Ms. Cassandra Nicole, to introduce our concluding topic.
Thank you, Ms. Tan. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I am Ms. Cassandra Nicole, and it is my honor to introduce our final speaker for tonight. Her topic will be on the plasticity of language recovery after early brain injury. She is a second-year student at Western Mindanao State University's College of Teacher Education, pursuing a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English. As an achiever since her early years, she graduated from Kadalagan Elementary School as the second highest ranked student and consistently excelled as an honor student at Ayala National High School. In the Western Mindanao State University College entrance exam, she scored an impressive 93% and successfully passed the interview for the BSED program, her sole choice. Despite navigating a new environment and adapting to college life in her first year, she thrived as one of the academic achievers in the College of Teacher Education, earning a general average weight of 1.431. Currently, she is committed to refining her skills, embracing opportunities for growth, and striving for excellence in her chosen field.
Thank you, Ms. Cassandra Nicole. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Abrica.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Once again, good evening, everyone. I am Ashley Janice B. Abrica, your last speaker for tonight's online conference. Now, through the previous speakers, it was great that we have gained such knowledge on how the mechanisms happening in our brain work with respect to language acquisition and language learning. But the question is, what happens to our language functions if one side of our brain is damaged or injured? Naturally, an injured area may struggle to function, or in worse scenarios, it will no longer have the chance to function at all. What would happen then? Can the brain adapt and restore its language abilities? These questions will lead us to language recovery after early brain injury, which is specifically the neuroplasticity. Um, can you play the slide, please? Next slide. So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience or following injury. Neuroplasticity is particularly fascinating when we look at how it relates to language recovery after brain injury. This capacity is particularly strong in younger children whose brains reorganize functions that might otherwise be permanently lost. Researchers have also studied how children's brain um, can remarkably adapt in the face of an injury. And one of these researchers who have conducted an investigation in this aspect is Eric Haynes Lenneberg. Eric Haynes Lenneberg was a linguist and neurologist who made significant contributions to the study of language acquisition in children. He noted that the left and right hemispheres are thought to have equipotentiality in early life. When we say equipotentiality, this means that if one side of our brain is damaged, the other side can take over its functions. Next slide, please. He also made his clinical observations showed that brain injuries before age 2 led to both normal and impaired language, regardless of which hemisphere was affected. And also, he made mention that as children grow, the left hemisphere becomes more responsible for language. So, if there is an injury to the left hemisphere in an older child, language problems are more likely to happen, showing that the left side is starting to take on a dominant role in language. And by adulthood, the left hemisphere has become the main center for language. So, if a severe injury happens to this area, language loss is usually permanent because the right hemisphere can no longer take over language functions. Recent studies also on children with left hemisphere perinatal stroke support this view. Next slide, please. These are the researchers that you can see in the screen. Their studies showed that after the left hemisphere perinatal stroke, the right hemisphere can take over language functions, allowing children to recover full language proficiency by adolescence. Next slide. And children who have strokes before age 5 also show similar recovery patterns with the right hemisphere helping with language. When strokes occurs after age 5, language rarely reorganizes to the right hemisphere, often resulting in lasting language impairments. And although early brain plasticity is impressive, language functions consistently reorganize only in specific frontotemporal areas corresponding to the normal language network, indicating that even young brains have limits to their plasticity. Now, while we are discussing this incredible ability of our brain, do you think it is really possible? To answer this curiosity, whether this brain plasticity that we are talking about right now happens in real life, let me introduce to you this amazing girl called Glass Half Full Girl. Glass Half Full Girl, whose brain was rewired even after losing her entire left hemisphere. She is Maura Lieb. Maura Lieb's case is a notable example of extreme brain plasticity. So let us dive into her neuroplasticity experience. You can see in your screen right now, this is the timeline that happened in her neuroplasticity experience. Next slide. Maura had a massive stroke before birth sometime in the 3rd trimester, meaning this happened when Maura was still in her mother's womb. Well, at that time, they didn't know that she already had a stroke. But by the time that she was born, she seemed to be like a typical baby. Next slide. In early 2008, baby Maura started having severe epileptic seizures. Maura and her parents said in an interview that Maura experienced having seizures 20 in a minute, and in a day there were hundreds. Thus, her parents immediately brought Maura to the hospital and had the doctors get her brain's MRI, or the magnetic resonance imaging. And by the time Maura was 9 months old, she underwent hemispherectomy to remove her brain's entire left side. Hemispherectomy is a surgical process that involves removing or completely disconnecting a part of a brain. Next slide. And doctors thought Moralib might suffer from movement and language impairment. Because of Moralib's case, doctors speculated that Moralib will have a hard time living a normal life as she will not be able to talk, walk, and do things that she wants. Yet, next slide please. Yet, Moralib had an amazing recovery. However, yes, next slide. Amazing recovery. As you can see in the pictures, she is playing sports, socializing with others, and flashing her wide smile that despite of the things that she went through. And we have to take note that however the surgery was successful, but after the surgery, Morally was like a newborn baby again. She couldn't move like she used to before the injury, and learning to speak took years also. Her brain had to rewire itself using the right hemisphere in doing the things or what the left hemisphere usually does. Meaning, despite losing, not yet, please go back. Meaning, despite losing the left hemisphere, which typically accounts or controls the language and speech functions, Mora's right hemisphere has adapted and developed language abilities. That was how the miracle of neuroplasticity helped Mora to recover and live a normal life. We can see in Mora's live case, back, not yet. It is it is truly miraculous how our brains have the ability to adapt in its functions, even if certain regions are damaged, or even if a whole hemisphere was being removed. Mora Lib is a shining example of neuroplasticity that despite of her left hemisphere being surgically removed, she has lived on a normal life and has retained her language function. Now, in conclusion, neuroplasticity showcases the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize language functions after early injury. Young brains can often shift language processing to the right hemisphere if the left is damaged, allowing children to regain language skills. Next slide, please. And as we grow older, this adaptability decreases, but the brain's capacity to adjust still plays a crucial role in language recovery. And that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abrica, for that wonderful presentation on the miraculous power of our brain. The prospect of language recovery, even after a fatal brain injury, really does highlight the incredible resilience of the human brain and the importance of timely interventions. Moving on, the floor is once more open for queries from our dear audience. Please feel free to ask anything you would like.
Let's proceed. I think there are no questions.
Thank you, everyone. By now, we have reached the culmination of our program. As a brief message on behalf of the classes of BSED 1A and BSED 2B, I would like to extend our appreciation to all the speakers for their valuable insights and to everyone in the audience for your active participation. Your questions and engagement have made the session all the more enriching. At this juncture, to formally conclude this meaningful conference, let us all open our hearts and ears as we call on our highly distinguished professor, Dr. Erickson O. Alieto, to deliver tonight's closing remarks.
Those are very profound adjectives. I think they are not appropriate to describe me. Very distinguished talaga. Perhaps the best adjective to describe me tonight is that I'm sick. That's why my voice seemed to resonate the need of my soul to rest. But nonetheless, I am very much satisfied with the performance of the individuals serving as presenter. At the end of the day, we look into the work of the discussion of Khalil Gibran, who said that the best way to make a student become a teacher is to ask them to teach the topic that they have learned. It is from that paradigm that basically we are realizing activities like this, that the discussions we had inside the classrooms are translated as opportunities where our students, like the BS Ed 2B, who studied the development of the human brain, the language acquisition, discussion of critical period, which are essential component also of the child development. The reason why the BSED 1B is forming part of the audience for this online conference is because we are tackling already the development of the human child. We understood that for a teacher to be very good in the disposal of his duties and responsibilities as molder of the youth, he must understand the different milestones, the processes involved with respect to human development, so he could arm himself with the different activities that must be realized inside the classroom. We understand that for us to make a better world, we do not need more politicians. We need more good teachers who are devoted to the need of the children inside the classroom and who are very much faithful to the calling of the profession. I hope that activities like this will go on and we will see in the near future hearing you inside not only of classrooms but of conferences that are for real, no? International ones where you will be delivering findings of your own research, experiences of your own classroom. I'd like to inform you that this will be the first. We will have the second online conference where we will reverse the role. It will be this time the BSED 1B discussing the different theories of human development, and the facilitators will be our BSED 2B. And then afterwards, we will have the last online conference where our BSED 3B will be discussing linguistic styles and research to our first year and second year students. So this is a unique approach of going beyond the corners of the classroom. We're utilizing online platform for the practice of this activity. So as form of instruction, I'd like to ask Torresiba to develop an online poll because the BSED 1B and BSED 3B will evaluate the speakers and they will grade the speaker which will form part as the grade of the group. I will add my evaluation with their evaluation. And then afterwards, we will have it reflected in the different Excels that's provided to you. So to the speakers, I know that the anxiety level is so high. And sometimes, you know what? It's not easy to wait, no, who will be assigned. But the wisdom behind it is that everybody should read. Everybody should take part because that is where learning takes place. I'm impressed with how you are able to deliver. I see that it is a product of days, mastering, rereading, reading the concepts. I believe that alongside enjoying the palaro, you had it in your mind and in your heart, no, the weight of presenting good discussion. And I hope it did not burden you as it should not be. No? It had motivated you in manners and ways that a teacher should be motivated. So, as parting words, thank you very much for the opportunity, for sparing your time. No? Congratulations. I'm impressed with the performance, the presentation. Kero is raising his hand. Yes, Kero, you are acknowledged. To
I'm
receive.
sorry, sir. I accidentally pressed the button.
It's okay. To receive, raise your hand now. It's your turn.
I accidentally pressed the raised
Okay,
hand button, sir. I'm very sorry po.
it's okay. I hope this time it's not an accident. Husin, are you raising your hand?
Yes, sir. Not an accident this time.
Oh,
When
okay.
you mention 1B, sir, do you mean 1A?
1A. I'm sorry, 1A. Wala pala akong 1B. Ba't pala ako walang 1B? Dapat may 1B ako. But ang child and development ko, laging science and math. No? Suki talaga nila ako. Okay, so 1A will be, but I will be discussing that inside their class and they will present first inside their class. So, to receive the evaluation or the survey will be of two parts. One, you will ask them to evaluate their PowerPoint that they have developed. So the grading will be 1 to 5. So group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5. And then the speaker, I'll be asking you to include the picture of the speaker. Not that I want you to judge them according to how they look, but because there are 5, so eventually you may be confused, ano ba itong diniscuss niya, sino ba siya? So somehow they will be guided. Okay, you are, then BSN 3B and 1A will be evaluating until 12 midnight. And then I will need to have the grade so that it could be reflected in the Excel. Thank you very much for sparing your time. I think we need to rest already. It's a wonderful weekend. I hope you have wonderful palaro. Yes, Miss La Fuente.
I accidentally, sir.
Why is what is the problem? Okay, so that's it. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest. Congratulations. Send the screenshots so that we can post. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Adanza.
Bye, sir.
I'd like to ask, will there be a third attendance?
Bye, sir.
I'm sorry, Adanza.
Bye,
Sorry,
sir.
Will there be a third attendance po? Or not?
No, not anymore.
Ay, okay. Thank you, sir. Bye po.
Thank you, sir.
Bye po.
Good night.
Bye po, sir.
Bye. Hindi na tayo mag-picture. Picture tayo.
Yes, thank you.
Idol, pero idol. Kero talaga idol. Guys, picture, guys. Idol, kero.
Nag-back out pa sa amin.
Kero sa Monday. Kero talaga idol. Half lang ang formal na suot.
Nabayan talaga ako, sir.
Hindi kayo magpa-drama ako sa Idol Ram, thank you Ram. Best AI. Ram, idol Ram, amma. Idol Ram. Wala na tayo nag-picture. Picture tayo. Picture ba? Mag-screenshot. Screenshot. Sino nagpipicture? Walang picture sa Manalan. Ano yan? Ako. 1, 2, 3, smile. Isa pa. 1, 2, 3, smile.
One express, one flat. Kahit imposible.
Idol Ram, idol. Ram. Uy, madaming pogi sa 1A. Uy!
Uy, kanina po, by IFCM.
Dito na totoo. Uy, pero real sa real. Real? Ay, may mga 1A pa pala. Uy, sabi na.
Expose ka tuloy. Yan kasi.
Ay, sorry. Sorry ba? Hindi napigilan sa Yasamin. Ay, hindi. Magsishift naman ako 3rd year. Don't worry. Oy!
Uy, wag.
Walang iwanan. Idol, wag. Uy, pero real sa real.
Napatanong
Sa mga 1A na nandito, keep it up.
Mag-evaluate din sila?
Mag-evaluate
Kita na lang daw sa Monday.
Sige. Okay.
Mga 1A, mag-evaluate kayo maayos. Evaluate din namin kayo maayos. Yes. Reciprocation yan. Reciprocation.
Tama. Give and take.
Thank you, Ms. Trogani. Please, thank you for everything you've done. Please tell Ms. Tan for the work that she's done. Please, I'd like to extend my gratitude to all of the 1A officers and the 1A participants who were available right now. Thank you all for your hard work despite yung palaro. Thank you.
Yes po, thank you so much and congratulations
Grabe talaga
po.
yan si BSN Counselor. Narinig ata nila yung pag-iyak natin kanina na wag magtanong.
Oy, gusto ko sabihan si sir, we did not enjoy our palaro, sir. It's been a burden for us. I cannot sleep well, I cannot eat well, I cannot even
Lalo
drink
na kay
well.
Ram. O, iyak na yan si Ram mamaya.
Uy, Ram, andyan si Idol, Ram. Thank you, Ram.
Thank you so much, Ram. Masaya sa palaro.
Thank you, Ram. Sana, Ram, nakatulog ka ng maayos. May patayin ka ba, Ram?
Hoy, Alan, yung picture mo hindi nakakatuwa. Yung background, Alan. Maraming nakakaalam niyan.
So ano man,
Ay, Ram. Yung evaluation pala ng 3B.
sila,
gagawa?
sila ano na yun, 1A na yun ang bahala at 3B na
Sila nang bahala nun.
Grabe talaga mga reactions ni Ram.
3B nang bahala, si Kuya Torresiba daw.
Doxology pa lang.
Doxology ang part ng program si Ram. Shit.